If there's one thing that women and men can agree on, it's that it is objectively dangerous for women to walk alone at nighttime, to be outside at nighttime, and we all know why. So I just don't think it is that radical to propose that one day a week men should get a curfew so that women can go on walks at nighttime or runs or just like be outside. Imagine the freedom of being able to just go on a run at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Do you know what would happen if we instituted this? All the male allies, all the good men, the ones who would step up and protect women from danger, they would stay home. They would follow the law because they're good, law-abiding citizens. But all the men who are actual criminals, who hurt women, who force themselves on them, do you think of all of the laws that they currently ignore, this curfew is the one that they would respect? Male predators would love this law because every night the streets would be filled with women to prey upon. And they're without protection because the 99.9% of men who don't sexually assault women, they're not going to be around to keep those women safe. The idea of a male curfew is so moronic because guess what? Statistically speaking, not that many men are dangerous. Like so many other things that you've been told in your life, the idea that women are uniquely vulnerable to random attacks of violence on the street is a lie. You have been lied to. We all have. It's propaganda pushed by a feminist narrative that will not die, despite overwhelming statistical evidence that it's ridiculous. According to my own government, men are 3 times more likely than women to be attacked on the street by a random stranger. It's men who are the victims of this kind of violence, not women. But of course, women like this are not really scared. It's fake. It's all an act. It's a story that women like to perform. Feel sorry for me. I'm so vulnerable as a woman because men are so dangerous. I'm part of the good gender. My life is so tough under the oppression of these bad men. It's just virtue signaling. That's all that's going on, and it's enough to make you vomit.
If men did not exist, I would go to the store like this. But men still do exist, so I'll go like this.
Not all men.
Yes, we know.
Women hate it when men say not all men. That really triggers them. They do not like their sexism being pointed out. So they try and make fun of this phrase, try and pretend like it's ridiculous, but it's just another tactic of shaming men into silence, not speaking up about how uncomfortable they are living in a culture which is so comfortable discriminating against men. On feminist forums, they share memes like this. They're trying to frame this phrase as though it's men interrupting and men trying to control women's voices. Even labeling it as a male pick-me behavior, like men sneakily trying to cozy up to women, being like, hey, I'm not like that. I'm not like those other men. I mean, are we surprised by women's reaction that when hearing a man speak up, like, hey, this is painful to be the victim of this kind of discrimination, this kind of generalization, these kinds of harmful stereotypes, then instead of actually listening to those men and hearing what this is like, women are framing it once again as being about them? Like, check out this article. The socialization of men is such that even a good man, a supportive man, a respectful man, a trusted man has within him the potential for violence and harm because these behaviors are normalized through the patriarchy. And as such, we know that even the men that we love, never mind random men who we don't know, have the potential to be dangerous. Surely, all people have that potential. But in a world divided into the oppressed and the oppressors, the former learn to fear the latter as a defense mechanism. So, when you enter a space, any space, as a man, you carry with yourself the threat of harm. Even the good men, the trusted men, the loved men, deep down, you are the oppressor. You are inherently threatening, so don't you dare say not all men. This is such a ridiculous, obviously bigoted worldview that has sadly become normalized, and predictably, it has led to many modern women holding explicitly hateful views about men.
Simply put, if a man tells me that he hates women, I know that he's dangerous. If a woman tells me that she hates men, I know it just because she's been emotionally done wrong. I don't care if a woman says, I hate men. In fact, I encourage her. You should hate men.
Here's the thing, is that every single man that I know acknowledges that some men are awful. dangerous even. You'd think that this could be something that we could bond over, that all people, men and women, could agree to. All the good people are on a team together against the bad people. But no, men are awful, men are toxic, men are the problem. And women have the audacity to be surprised when good men feel defensive hearing that? It's not because we love interrupting women or controlling their voices. It's because it's obviously hurtful to be a good man who treats women well, to be lumped in with scumbag men who assault women. What the fuck do we have in common with that asshole? What are you talking about, all men? How insulting to group us as a collective when the vast majority of men would step in to physically defend her against one of those scumbags. And yet, by the original sin of being born into the same gender, what, we're meant to just take the collective guilt that's been heaped upon us? Don't you dare say not all men. How dare you not allow us to collectively stereotype and discriminate against you? This could be solved by a kindergarten level exercise of empathy. Women, how would you feel if a man said, women are cheats, women are liars, women are sluts? Wouldn't you feel defensive? Wouldn't that hurt your feelings? Why is it so hard for you to imagine that men might feel that same way?
'Cause guys don't have feelings.
Translation, I don't care about men's feelings. The most dishonest sleight of hand that these modern women do is the treatment of all men as a monolith, as though we all exist as just one undifferentiated mass. For so many modern women, when they think about men, they picture this. Just one big group, all the same, all collectively guilty for the actions of all men. Men find this offensive for many reasons, one of which is because men are not collectively inclined. That's not how masculinity works. We don't like to see ourselves as part of a group. We don't want that. Inside the heart of every man is a desire to be free, to be independent, to be his own man, to take responsibility for himself, to answer to no one, to be his own leader. I don't think modern women have bothered to try and understand this about men. They assume that we're just like them because women crave social acceptance. They don't mind being part of a group. Women value social conformity in a way that men just don't. But it's absolutely core to masculine identity to be judged as an individual. And that's why this graph makes no sense, because it completely ignores that all men are individuals and that in the world, women in particular have always treated men differently based on where they place them in a hierarchy. This is the graph that actually makes sense, that reflects the true reality of our world. There's a few privileged men at the very top, but the vast majority aren't there. And your treatment as a man is completely different based on where you exist on this graph. To say that it is men who have ruled throughout history and therefore men are privileged is such a dishonest framing of history. At the top, there are a few kings and warlords, yes, but the bulk of men are there at the bottom, struggling to survive, to feed their families, to make enough money to pay the ridiculous taxes of the aristocracy, and of course, being forced to fight ridiculous wars on the behalf of their nobles. To say that in the past men were privileged is so dishonest. It's a lie. This is the reality, and you see this distribution for men in so many areas. Like on dating apps, you've got a few good-looking guys at the top who are cleaning up, but the majority of men are getting no matches. When it comes to finances, you've got a few wealthy CEOs at the very top raking in millions, but the majority of men are doing blue-collar work, struggling, suffering. That's the way that it's always been, but in the modern era, it's specifically painful because female hypergamy has meant that these women are only dating that top percentage of men who treat them badly because they have so many options, and then those women are going to cast blame and shame across all men because of the mistreatment they've endured by those few top guys? No, that's fucked up. That's not fair. It's ridiculous. It's sexist. Why can't women see that? Why is it so impossible for them to conceive that one of these good guys who's always worked hard and always treated women well, he might say, hey, not all men, because he genuinely feels offended at being lumped in a category of guys who he has nothing in common with? What sensible, rational man is not going to feel offended when he hears women speak like this?
All these men deserve like a first-class ticket to hell.
Yes.
They need to burn, baby, burn.
The same women who will jump up and down if you indulge even a small stereotype about a different group have zero problem making sweeping, sexist, hateful comments about men, and they are legitimately surprised when men object. You want to know the most recent defense that women have to try and shut down men's voices who object, saying, hey, not all men, it's this. Not all men, but somehow always a man. It's okay to ignore the fact that 99.9% of men aren't perpetrators. We're going to saddle all men with the collective guilt of being sexual predators because that 0.1% is always a man. That justifies a curfew. That justifies being sexist against men. That's why it's okay that airlines will show women where other women are sitting when they're picking a seat, because it's completely reasonable to assume that all men are inherently dangerous. That's not sexist or bigoted at all. And let me tell you, women can be plenty violent. Men don't have a monopoly on that. I've heard some stories in my private consultations with men that leave you shaking. Women can do awful things. And even if we were to say that most violence is perpetrated by men, is that really the road that you want to go down? Discriminating against an entire gender because of the actions of just a few? Do women really want to play that game when, according to BMJ Pediatrics, when 70% of the time a parent is found to murder their own babies, it's a woman? Or should we talk about how when it's proved that a person has made a false accusation, it's almost always a woman? Should we treat all women as liars because even though not all women always are women? Ladies, you play with fire, you are going to get burned. This is not a road that you want to walk down. If you are ranting against men in a sexist and generalizing way, and some brave man says, not all men, don't get angry at him, check yourself. Ask yourself, was I being sexist? It is so important that we do not allow our thoughts of each other to descend into mindless tribalism. It takes so little effort to say this magical word, some. Some men are terrible. We can all agree. Some women are terrible. I try my hardest on this channel to use that qualifier. It's so simple. It takes so little effort. I speak off the cuff a lot in my videos and I get passionate, so sometimes I might slip up. But I know in my line of work, it would be easy to descend into sexist tribalism. So I always make a concerted effort to praise high quality women, to acknowledge that even though I'm talking about toxic femininity, I'm pointing out problematic female behaviors and beliefs. We acknowledge that not every woman is like that. I don't want to alienate good women. I want them on my team. I want women to support us, to actively care about the male plight. And we're not going to succeed by labeling all women as terrible. It's wrong in the first place, but it's just stupid as a tactic. It is axiomatically true that terrible women are terrible and good women are women, and it takes no effort to acknowledge that fact. Why can't these women do that? What is so offensive about the notion not all men? I'm trying to make it a habit that when people in the comment section speak positively about their wives or their girlfriends, saying things like, oh, thank God my wife isn't like that, or my girlfriend's always been really supportive of me, I found one of the good ones. We notice it, we appreciate it, we say thank you, yes, this is good, this is more of what we want. We criticize the bad, we encourage the good. This is how we move forward, and I encourage all of you men, if you see a good woman in your life doing nice things for men, being supportive, thank her, show some appreciation, encourage her. When toxic women are starved of compliments because they're so awful to men that nobody wants to give them compliments anymore, and they notice that men are praising the high quality women who treat men as though they're dignified human beings, hopefully that will incentivize the toxic women to let go of some of their awful personality traits, let go of some of their toxic belief systems, and become real women again. But for this to succeed, for men and women to be on the same team again, to be allies, to support each other, feminism has to die. It will never deliver equality. It cannot, because there is a bug built into feminism that will prevent women from ever seeing men as deserving of equality. What is this bug and what can we do about it? How do you speak about this with women? How do you point it out to them? And why did this bug come about in the first place? It actually is because it links very neatly with female psychology. I'm going to talk about that in the rest of this video, which is available on Patreon.